This is a generational heist for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We have a huge new report from Elliotte Friedman that has revealed some wild information surrounding a perfect Toronto Maple Leafs trade. But to break down exactly what that is and discuss what it means going forward as well as some big updates ahead of tonight's game following what was a interesting win to say the least yesterday against the Flames. A ton to go over on this episode, folks, but before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, you guys have been absolutely fantastic with the support. Thank you guys for that. Darius, it's going to be an interesting one to go over today. Now, of course, the Leafs, they played tonight. They had a big win yesterday. It wasn't the cleanest win. Yes, it's against a very bad team, but you have to stack wins at this point. But across the NHL, trade reports are starting to pick up a lot earlier than previous years, and a lot of that could be because of the lack of games later on in the year in early 2026, but also the fact that teams are being aggressive as it pertains to the trade market here. And Elliotte Friedman dropped a report a few days ago, and then I'm going to dive into an article that dropped a couple days ago surrounding the Leafs aspect of it. But Elliotte Friedman said regarding Steven Stamkos and the Predators, if this continues the way it's going, I could see a situation where both sides sit down and talk and say, what are our options here? And there was also, I think, a tweet today talking about how basically Friedman says the Stamkos experiment in Nashville has not worked out and that he could request a trade here. And Darius, this has led to a ton of speculation on the Leafs side of things. We know how aggressive Brad Treliving has been in trying to add a top six winger. Keith Pelly given the green light to go all in. We'll dive into this article by Mark Friedis in a minute here. What are your thoughts on the report from Friedman and how the Leafs could be a player here? And I'm going to be honest, if they could grab him, especially at a buy low like it would be right now, it would be a steal for this team. And it's honestly something that they need, at least in my mind.
Yeah, and his contract is monstrous. We'll get to that in a second. But in terms of adding the player to the team, I mean, the Leafs have made their bed. They're trying to be a contender at this point. They're not going to be looking for younger players. They're going to be looking for younger players through the draft, right? They're trying to add to a Stanley Cup winning team or trying to make a Stanley Cup winning team and add to it. So Steven Stamkos, I think, makes some sense. Now, keep in mind the experiment, whatever you want to call it, whatever's going on in Nashville, hasn't worked. We thought that they were going to be one of the best teams in the league after last offseason because of all the moves they made, and it's been quite the complete opposite at this point. And Stamkos, I mean, if you look at his last 5 seasons or so, or a small sample size of his career over the last couple of years, he's coming off of a over 100-point season with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He then leaves Tampa Bay to go to Nashville, completely falls apart. The team was horrible last year. And then to start this year, he has not been very good. But that's with Nashville. It hasn't gone well there. What if he was a winger on the top line with the Toronto Maple Leafs? That could work out. He is a power play specialist. The Leafs have never had, besides Austin Matthews, like a shooting threat like that on the power play where, he is there for that one timer, kind of like Ovi in a way, right? So, again, Matthews has been that guy, but I hate the Leafs power play. And this is a topic for another video, their structure on the power play. But I think that it could make some sense here. But again, the contract, which we'll get into in a second, is a little bit dicey. But I think for the player, for the fit, where they want to go, maybe he does start to pick it up a little bit more if he were to be traded to the Leafs.
Yeah, looking at his salary, you can see the good news is it's not an 8-year deal like some of the stuff we've been talking about. It is only it's year 2 of 4, so 3 more years or 2 more years after this one, 3 including this year. $8 million a year, which is very expensive. Now you can see the article here, obviously talking about how Brad Treliving wants to make a splash and what could a trade look like. We'll link the article down below for those curious as well in the description. If Toronto and Nashville were to strike a deal, it would involve some salary retention from Nashville, potentially at 20% or more, which would be $1.7 million. And of course, this article proposes a trade for, you can see here, send Nick Robertson, who makes $1.8 million, Calle Jarnkrok, and David Kampf. And of course, you'd have to throw in something else, you would assume. However, the question mark becomes, I'll get your thoughts on this, Darius. Obviously, on the surface, this seems like an absolute steal for the Leafs, right? You're giving up Robertson, basically your extra pieces that you want to trade anyway for Steven Stamkos. Mm-hmm. However, I think if they only give up a couple of these guys, of course, you can make the salary work. You would probably have to retain a bit more if you're the Leafs, rather than, in this case, it has Nashville retaining 20%. Would you do a deal where it's Nick Robertson and salary filler and you're retaining 80% of the $8 million? So you're basically just buying the contract out from the Nashville Predators. Or do you think there's another team out there that would be willing to actually give up a draft pick? Now, maybe the Leafs would give up a draft pick in this scenario, but I don't see necessarily, I could see rather a world where they give up Nick Robertson, you make the rest, work out, you fill out the rest, and you throw in one late mid-round pick, but you take some 80% of the salary, and then Nashville gets out of it. They get a young player in Robertson. Again, the question will always be, though, will other teams have better offers? But he's been struggling this year, so this is the biggest buy low opportunity you could possibly get for a guy like this. And I think he'd be open to playing with the Leafs and rejuvenizing his career.
Yeah, I think that he was open to signing with the Leafs too, back 8 years ago or whenever that was, or maybe a little bit more at this point. I think he was open to playing for the Leafs, and I still think that he would be, right? So, to take it from the Nashville side of things, they're a team that has to get younger. They messed up a little bit. They thought something was going to happen last offseason, and it hasn't gone that way, right? So they have to start to get younger now, I think. And when you look at Stamkos, like you mentioned, after this year, still 2 years left on an $8 million deal, and I know the cap is going up, but if you're the Predators, if you can get out from that, or at least most of that, then at least you can go out next year with the cap going up and start to get younger, maybe start retooling the team a little bit because it hasn't gone the way that they wanted it to go. I still think that Stamkos is a good player and can add something, especially in the playoffs. We saw it when he was with Tampa against the Leafs. He's the type of guy that can hurt you on the scoreboard, and he drags his teammates into the fight. And the Leafs need guys like that because I feel like, they have the ability in the room. They just haven't shown it to do that. This is another guy that can do that. He's won Stanley Cups, all of those things. So it makes sense. From the Leafs point of view, coming out at least, I think that there has to be some retained salary here. A lot of it, I think, for this to work, first of all, especially this season. Maybe you get a third team involved. I think the Leafs would probably have to give up a draft pick as well. I don't think David Kampf is going that way in this deal. I think Nick Robertson makes a lot of sense, especially if you're getting Steven Stamkos back. Kelly Yarncroke used to play for the Nashville Predators, so that could make a lot of sense too, and freeing up some space there. Then Cowan would be, a regular in the lineup as well, depending on the third or the fourth line. So I think that it makes a lot of sense. Maybe you get a third team involved at this point, and then obviously they get some type of compensation in that way. But if you look at the lineup, they need a top six player, I think. And I think adding Steven Stamkos with everything that he's done, the fact that he knows how to win, he's been a captain in the past too. I think that it just makes sense for the Leafs at where they are, with where they are and trying to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, Cowan's in good. He's probably better suited in a bottom six role, at least for right now, until he develops a little bit more. Now, let's keep in mind, Stamkos is having an abysmal year. 2 points in 11 games. It is still early. He's had a significant drop-off, so whether you attribute that to age, whether you attribute that to just the Nashville Predators not being a good fit for him, let us know down below. But yeah, they would obviously have to retain salary, the Predators, that is. But I like the framework of Nick Robertson and figure the rest out. You get somebody who has had, I mean, we don't need to tell you how good Stamkos has been. He obviously has some of the highest goal-scoring upside, even at his age now in the NHL. And it would give this team either the jump that they need, the Toronto Maple Leafs it is, or it makes them a little bit older and you have a bit more salary on your books, which could not work out. But I think at this point, you're probably assuming they want to trade him, not going to get a better, at least pure value standpoint asset back at any point of this trade deadline, especially with the lack of picks that the Leafs have. So let us know down below what your thoughts are on this. And here's a quick look at their stats. You mentioned it. He had the 106-point season 4 years ago. He had a great year coming off of his last year in Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Has completely fallen off. Attribute that to a lot of different things. So let us know down below what your thoughts are, and hopefully as well the Leafs can take care of business tonight. It's been a rough stretch. We're gonna see Joseph Wall here at some point in the near future. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys later.